Well, the summer heat is on in Louisiana, and if you're looking for a way to cool off and have some fun, come on down to Blue Bayou. Could be just the thing for you. So, you guys having a lot of fun today?
Yeah!
All right, well, what's your favorite ride?
The wedge. The wedge.
The wedge. All right, you have a favorite ride too?
Yeah, Mad Moccasin.
Mad Moccasin, all right. How about you?
Mad Moccasin.
Oh, anybody been on that Atchafalaya run?
Yeah.
Is it fun too?
Yeah!
Oh. Well, are you ready for school to start? No. No. You don't want to go back to school, do you? No. You spend all summer here, huh?
Yeah.
Are the moms ready for school to start?
Yes.
Get the kids back in school, all right? The surrounding Baton Rouge area is rich in American history. Just north of Baton Rouge is Port Hudson, a Civil War battlefield. Recently, a Civil War Sites Advisory Commission proposed to spend millions of dollars to help preserve battlefields like Port Hudson. The Port Hudson State Commemorative Area is a beautiful setting reminding us of days gone by in one of the most significant battles of the entire Civil War. You can imagine the fierce struggle fought on the open field or take a close look at an authentic cannon once used by the soldiers during battle. The siege of Port Hudson began on May 23, 1863, and continued for 48 days, making it the longest siege in American military history. Confederate troops fought long and hard in places like Slaughter's Field, the Priest Cap, and here at Fort Desperate.
Fort Desperate was one of the major scenes of fighting during the siege of Port Hudson during the summer of 1863. It was attacked on two different occasions by General Banks's Union Army, the first time on May the 27th, 1863, and then again on June 14th, 1863. One of the unusual aspects about the defense of Fort Desperate was the fact that only one Confederate unit was stationed here during the entire 48 days of the siege, and that was the 15th Arkansas Infantry. Normally, the Confederate units rotated back and forth around the line so that they would get a little bit of rest. But since this position is fairly isolated, it's on the north side of a creek and well away from the major part of the Confederate earthworks, it was difficult to move soldiers in and out, so the 15th Arkansas stayed here the entire time. The first Union assault got within the ditch or the moat outside the fort. The Union soldiers tried several times to come over the walls, but the Confederate defenders inside with mostly rifle fire were able to throw back the assaults, and the Union soldiers had to wait until night so that they could retreat back to their lines. They came again, as I said, on June the 14th. This time they were armed with a fairly new weapon, a hand grenade that was called the Ketchum grenade. The soldiers that got in the ditch tried to throw these hand grenades over the walls onto the Confederate soldiers who were inside here. They worked on a percussion cap system so that they had to fall on the nose of the grenade for it to go off. It was difficult to throw the grenades over the walls with enough force so that they could land on their noses and explode. The first few that fell in apparently didn't explode. Some of the Confederates were able to figure out that these were hand grenades, and someone came up with the idea of taking blankets and spreading the blankets along the inside of the wall, catching the hand grenades as they came in so that they wouldn't explode. And then after they got a number of the grenades together, they crept up to the wall, then dropped them in on top of the Union soldiers who had thrown them, killing them with their own weapons. Union soldiers took pretty heavy casualties from those grenades and eventually quit throwing them. Again, they were pinned down in the ditch and had to wait until nightfall until they could retreat. The casualties here were fairly heavy. We don't know precisely how many Union soldiers were killed and wounded, but we suspect it was in the vicinity of 200 or 300 men. The Confederate regiment that defended Fort Desperate, the 15th Arkansas, lost more than half of its men in killed and wounded and sick by the end of the siege.
While you're visiting Fort Desperate, be sure to take advantage of the beautiful scenic trails. We talked to Greg Potts, area manager, about the trails and the boardwalk.
Here at Port Hudson, we have 6 miles of trails for our visitors to walk and to see the battlefield and some nature also. 1/2 mile of that trail system is a sidewalk, and it leads to a boardwalk, the boardwalk we're standing on now. And this boardwalk, of course, surrounds Fort Desperate and, in fact, intrudes over Fort Desperate. The boardwalk and the sidewalk were built for several reasons. The sidewalk is handicap access, as well as baby strollers and that type of thing, anything on wheels, wheelchairs, or whatever. Also, the boardwalk keeps folks off of the earthwork. This is the most visited portion of the park as far as the historic works go, and thus we have it well protected with the boardwalk, as there is no one actually walking on it. Port Hudson does have the boardwalk, which does protect the earthworks, and the earthworks here are some of the best preserved earthworks in the United States on Civil War battlefields. Once again, Port Hudson did have 4.5 miles of works. The park has about 1 1/8 miles of earthworks, and Fort Desperate is 3/4 of that distance, and the boardwalk does go over that Fort Desperate part of the work.
One of the more interesting things to visit at Port Hudson is the new Interpretive Center, which includes a museum with displays of original Civil War artifacts.
In our Interpretive Center, we have several types of exhibits, and one of these is right here in front of you. It's the panorama of the various Harper's Weeklies and Leslie drawings of newspaper prints of the time period. One of these featured up here is of the black troops charging the Confederates here at Port Hudson. That's one of the main things that Port Hudson is famous for, is that this is the first place in U.S. history where blacks fought in combat in regimental strength. And that particular Harper's Weekly drawing depicts that event. Even in those days, they had ways of changing the news slightly, and this particular print shows the 1st and 3rd Louisiana Native Guard fighting hand-to-hand with the Confederate soldiers. In actuality, the troops didn't get within 200 yards of the Confederates because the black troops were put in somewhat of a suicidal type situation that didn't permit them to get any closer than that. Also, on their flag, you might see it has 2nd Louisiana, whereas they were really the 1st and 3rd. Port Hudson is very unique in that it has a lot of drawings and also a lot of photographs. In one of our other exhibits, we have a surrender photograph, the only known photograph of Confederates surrendering in the Civil War. And it's also the only known photograph of Confederates here at Port Hudson. In this case, we have some of the original photographs taken during the Civil War. One in particular in here is General Franklin Gardner. Gardner was the general of the Confederate forces here, and he was a West Pointer and also a Northerner by birth who had moved to South Louisiana and married a prominent Louisiana family within that family, into the Mouton family, the governor of Louisiana, Governor Mouton, and thus took sides with the Confederacy during the war.
I'm here with Kathy Tarver, who is the interpretive park ranger here at Port Hudson. And Kathy, tell us a little bit about what's highlighted in your display cases.
Okay, one thing, a lot of time we talk about the Civil War, sometimes it's forgotten that it was oftentimes fought in people's backyards. Like the town of Port Hudson was a town, people's homes. So in one of the cases, I talk a little bit about the toys and games the children here would have played. One case is about refugees, and when the towns were invaded, where the women, children, men who were too old, or people who were not soldiers could evacuate to. And then in other cases, it's just different quotes of what these people went through and felt as their home was being invaded.
Do you have a favorite quote that one of the women say?
Actually, yes, I do, and it's from a woman here in Zachary, too. Basically, what the story is I don't remember the lady's name. She is cooking mush for her supper, and Yankees, Union, whichever term you'd prefer to use, invade her home and take her supper. Well, what she does is she runs in and just screams, you're eating the poultice from my husband's leg, which basically is the medicine they would have put on a sore leg. And so the soldiers, the Union soldiers, ran out and quickly unswallowed. The bronze plaques mounted against the wall were made by a local artist, Frank Hayden, who was a professor at Southern University. The top row commemorates the Port Hudson area, and the bottom 3 rows highlight different points within the siege. You can see when the Mississippi sank, March 14th attack, and then the one to the bottom right is Forever Silent.
The Port Hudson battlefield encompasses approximately 4 square miles. Only about 1/4 of that is within the boundaries of the Port Hudson State Commemorative Area and actively protected by a governmental entity. The remaining 3/4 of the battlefield is in either private hands or owned by a few corporations such as the Georgia Pacific Paper Mill. Those private landowners, by and large, recognize the resource that they have in the existing earthworks on their property and have been very good about protecting that resource. The employees here at the commemorative area have established a very good working relationship with the local landowners and have helped them to recognize ways that they can go about protecting the earthworks that exist on their property.
I understand that there's some federal funds that are trying to be obtained to help preserve Civil War battle sites around the country. How does that affect Port Hudson?
There's a good possibility of the federal Congress appropriating money to preserve Civil War battlefields all over the country. The Civil War Sites Advisory Commission, which was appointed by Congress, traveled to Civil War battlefields all over the country, setting up a priority system for protection. They established Port Hudson as number 3 on their list, and they have recommended to Congress that it appropriate money to help with such things as purchasing land, interpretive programs, buying artifacts for the museum, things like this. So we anticipate, not knowing exactly what Congress will do, that there will be money available if there are willing sellers to buy further land here on the battlefield.
So for now, the beauty of this historical landmark is preserved, and the courage, determination, and extraordinary heroism on the part of Port Hudson soldiers will long be remembered as a classic episode in Civil War history. School days, dear old golden rule days. Kids everywhere have returned to school campuses around Baton Rouge. Episcopal School has been in the forefront of academic excellence in Baton Rouge for many years. We came and talked to some of the faculty and students here at Episcopal about the 93-94 school year. We talked to some seniors, and we also talked to a group of students who will be up and coming in the next few years. Seniors here are gearing up for a great year. We caught up with a few students during study hall and talked with them about their plans.
I'm the student body president. I hope to make a lot of changes, get a lot of student involvement.
Good. How long have you gone to Episcopal?
Since 5th grade.
Since 5th grade, all right. Tim?
Yes.
What are you going to do this year? Are you excited about your senior year?
Yeah, I am.
What are you involved in?
I play a lot of sports. Right now I'm swimming in the fall, and then I play basketball in the winter, and I play golf in the spring, so I'm pretty excited about athletics.
All right.
As well as this being my last year to have some fun.
Have some fun, huh? All right. And Doug?
Yeah, I'm also big into sports. I'm in swimming right now with Tim. Then I go into soccer and then baseball. And looking forward to a good year in all my sports. Last year.
You guys enjoy a lot of school activities?
Right.
You guys have a lot
Yeah.
of school activities?
Yeah.
You get a lot of participation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are your seniors excited this year? Rowdy? Are they ready to go?
Right.
Okay, Alan,
Hi, over there on the end. How are you doing?
All right.
All right.
How are you?
I'm okay. How's your senior year going?
It's going pretty
All
well.
2 days of it, right?
Right.
Okay, what are you going to do this year?
Well, along with the other two, I'm really big into sports and
Like what?
cross country in the fall and do soccer and then track afterwards.
Okay.
And I hope to do really well in those.
Well, what has been happening over the summer is we've been preparing for the largest enrollment in the school's history. We started school with 900 students, which is more than we've ever had before, grades 1 through 12. And we've added first grade. That was the new and exciting thing happening that we've been preparing for, is bringing on board our first grade classes. We've been eagerly anticipating the arrival of the little new kids on the block. We are opening with 3 sections of first grade. We had not anticipated that large a demand, but we're very happy about it. We're trying to become more attuned to the needs for global education, and that is the broadening of our students' horizons. We've expanded the social studies curriculum to include a history of modern China course, an elective. We're adding language courses, which include Japanese and Chinese. And we've added some science electives that are very interesting. Human anatomy and biotechnology are only 2 of them. So we've seen a really an expansion in the curriculum to reflect the needs for today's students.
Oh, here we are together, together, together. Oh, here we are together, together we'll stay.
What's that?
A picture of a cowboy.
A picture of a cowboy?
A cowboy dog.
A cowboy dog? Did you make that up?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Drew.
Drew? What's your last name, Drew?
Wheeler.
Drew Wheeler. And Drew, how old are you?
6.
6 years old. Well, that's a pretty good-looking cowboy dog. And what's your name?
Megan.
Megan. Is this your friend?
Yes.
And what's her name?
Rebecca.
Rebecca. Okay. Have you been friends for a while? Do you do a lot of fun things together? Good. What's your favorite color?
Pink, purple, and green.
Pink, purple, and green. Well, that's great. Are you happy to be in school? This is your first time to come to Episcopal, isn't it? Is it fun for the last couple days? Do you like your teacher?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is Janelle, and she's brought her favorite book today to share. Janelle, what's the name of your book?
The Very Hungry Caterpillar.
The Very Hungry Caterpillar. And you like this book? What happens to the caterpillar?
It gets very fat and makes a very fat cocoon.
It makes a very fat cocoon. And then what happens to him?
He turns into a butterfly.
He turns into a beautiful butterfly.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the class of 2005! It's been a year since Hurricane Andrew left its mark of destruction on neighborhoods just like this one. Friends and neighbors had to pull together to get through the hard times. Neighbors' Night Out will be observed on Thursday night, August 26th. It was designed by the Fear and Violence Commission to help Baton Rouge citizens get to know their neighbors. We talked to Robert Collins, a member of the Fear and Violence Commission, about Neighbors' Night Out.
A year ago, on August 26th of 1992, Hurricane Andrew came to town. And when Hurricane Andrew came to town, he caused a lot of problems. There were trees down all over town, and there were people without electricity because of that, and there was a lot of people who were inconvenienced incredibly. But there was something good that came out of Hurricane Andrew, too, and that was that without electricity, people didn't have something that they had taken for granted for a long time, which was television. without television and without electricity, people in the evening after supper would go outside onto their front porch or their front steps or in the front yard or the street in front of their home, and they did something they hadn't done much of in a long, long time, which was talk to their neighbors. Now, that sounds incredible, but I think a lot of us had forgotten about how interesting our neighbors are, and a lot of us had been caught up in the fact that with television and air conditioning and a lot of other modern conveniences, it's easier to stay inside. So what happened with a number of people I know is that they said, you know, this is great. We had forgotten about how nice it was to get to know our neighbors and visit with them personally. And even when the electricity is all back on and everything's fixed from the hurricane, we're going to come out here, we're going to keep doing this. And something strangely happened, and everybody kind of forgot about how positive that was. And everybody, when the electricity came back on, everybody went back inside. Well, the Neighbors Night Out project is simply an initiative by the Mayor's Commission on Fear and Violence, and the Mayor's Office is co-sponsoring this as well, which is designed to help recapture that spirit that everybody remembered a year ago, but then we've all kind of forgotten about since then. And the idea is very simple. It's that the idea is that you go out after supper on Thursday evening, August the 26th, and spend a few minutes talking with your neighbors out in your front yard or the street in front of your home. It doesn't cost anything. There's not even a set time to do it. We've left this completely open so that if you get through with supper and want to go outside at 5 o'clock, that's fine. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, whenever you want to go outside and visit with your neighbors for a few minutes, that's what you do. All it costs is turning off the TV set for a few minutes on Thursday evening.
Now, how did you get involved on the Fear and Violence Commission?
Well, my involvement with the Fear and Violence Commission was very simple. I'm a member of the Baton Rouge Chamber of Commerce. I was talking with one of the staff members of the Chamber of Commerce one day about trying to do things to improve Baton Rouge, and he said to me, you know, have I got a job for you? The mayor's office is just starting up the Fear and Violence Commission, and he said, I think this is something that you would be interested in and want to devote some energy to. And I said, I'll give it a try. And that was a few months ago, and I've been working with the project for the last few months, and this Neighbors Night Out initiative is our first public project.
Do you see this as the first in a string of events maybe to help pull the community back together?
I think that the Commission on Fear and Violence would like to do a number of things to help people in Baton Rouge to feel more like a community and less like isolated individuals. I think there is a feeling on the Commission, I don't speak for the whole Commission, but my sense is that the Commission members feel like the more that we can do to give people a sense of feeling like they're part of a community and feeling less isolated, then the more comfortable they'll feel safer, they'll feel more at ease with their neighbors, and this will reduce the amount of fear in the community and perhaps even reduce the level of violence in the community. There's no shortage of violence in Baton Rouge, and everyone is well aware of the fact the headlines are real big about violence that occurs in Baton Rouge, and the fact that we have already exceeded the murder rate for Baton Rouge this year. Those are terrible statistics, and I think it's sometimes easy to dwell too much on those negatives and forget about the fact that people can be a very powerful instrument for change. And people don't have to sit back and just read the headlines and say, isn't this terrible? People can be a force for positive change. That's the kind of thing that I think the Commission would like to do, is change that negative spiral back into a positive spiral and have people do some things. I mean, the Neighbors Night Out project is a good example. It doesn't cost anything. It's open to everybody, and all you have to do is give up a few minutes of your time, and it can be a force for positive change, we believe.
So come on, Baton Rouge, let's show our support for Neighbors Night Out. Turn that television set off and take a walk outside and get to know your neighbors. Let's create a positive atmosphere for our beautiful city of Baton Rouge.